And so we have to ask ourselves this question. Did this really happen? There's only three options. Number one, the gospel is lying. The Bible is lying to us. Jesus didn't actually do these things. Number two, Jesus was empowered by demonic forces to do this. Or number three, the Spirit of the living God dwells inside of him. Number one, the gospel writers are lying to us. Number two, Jesus is demonically empowered. Or number three, the Spirit of the living God lives inside of Jesus Christ. And you know what I find fascinating about Jesus? Not even his opponents deny what happened here. Not even those who deny that he is the Son of God deny what happened here. You know, the temptation in our modern world is to say, well, this kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. They were simple people. They didn't have iPads yet. They were just ancient people. They didn't know any better. They didn't know about science. They knew that if someone was born blind and you spit in the mud, it would not bring their sight back. They knew that. Trust me. But what I find amazing is not even when you read the Gospels. When you read Jewish literature from the ancient world, you know what they say? They don't say Jesus never did any of the stuff he claimed to do. They say Jesus practiced witchcraft. Let me show you this. This is from the Jewish Talmud, which was compiled a few hundred years after Jesus, but it was based on traditions that were written down or spoken before this. Here's what the Jews taught their followers about Jesus so that they wouldn't follow Jesus. On Passover Eve, the Jews said, they hung the corpse of Jesus the Nazarene after they killed him by way of stoning. And a crier went out before him for 40 days, publicly proclaiming, Jesus the Nazarene is going to be stoned. Watch this. Because he practiced sorcery. Why did they accuse him of that? He incited the people to idol worship. Why did they accuse him of that? And he led the Jewish people astray. Anyone who knows of a reason to acquit him should come forward and teach it on his behalf. And the court could not find a reason to acquit Jesus, so they stoned him and hung his corpse on Passover Eve. This text is amazing. Now, some of you got your Christian hats on and are like, Kyle, but they didn't stone Jesus. They could. Forget all that, okay? Put on your mom and dad hat when you're trying to figure out who's lying to you, okay? Put on your detective hat, okay? Think about what this has in common with what the Gospels say. They admit Jesus was killed on Passover Eve and he was hung on a cross. That happened. They also agree that Jesus practiced sorcery. Now, why do they think that? Because Jesus did pretty amazing things. And they cannot deny that he did amazing things. The fish and the loaves, you can't unexplain that. Like, people got fed that day. Blind eyes were opened. And so their only conclusion isn't that all that stuff didn't happen, but Jesus practiced witchcraft. That's why we don't want to follow him. He must have done miracles by the power of demons, which, by the way, is the exact same thing we read about in our own Gospels that the Pharisees accused Jesus of. And so if you're bothered about the whole stoning thing, what's going on? They're trying to read Deuteronomy 13 and 18 back into the New Testament, okay? Because that was the punishment. If you were a false teacher who did miracles and led people astray, you were supposed to be stoned. And that whole thing about 40 days, that was about a fair trial. Because they didn't want to admit that Jesus was brought in at the middle of the night, had a rush trial where they couldn't convict him of anything, and they hung him on the cross. Church, can we trust our Bibles? Can we trust the Gospels? Sometimes I hear people say today, you know, we're not even really sure if Jesus existed. Maybe you're not sure. The ancients knew he existed. I mean, the Jews who hated Jesus, who hated Christians, knew he existed, knew he did miraculous things. They just said it was by the power of demons, not by God. And we can go through other sources as well. I'm not even mentioning the Greco-Roman sources. Here's another passage in the Talmud. It says, a master, another major rabbi, said, Jesus the Nazarene practiced magic, and he led Israel astray. And I love this. He led them astray to follow idols, right? That's what it says. What idolatry did Jesus lead them into? Believing that he was God. By the way, how do Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses deal with that? The Jews knew that Jesus claimed to be God. Here's another passage. This one's from a Christian, but he's arguing with the Jew. The Jews, Justin Martyr said, it was a display of magic art, for they even dared to say that Jesus was a magician and a deceiver of the people. And I mean, just find this fascinating, because here I am, I'm a modern person. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of skeptical about people who claim supernatural things. The ancients said, man, Jesus did these things. They had no problem believing that. The question was, did Jesus use witchcraft? One last passage to show you from the ancient world. This is the early church father, Origen, and he's arguing against the Jewish guy, Celsus. And Celsus is going to make the magic argument again. But after this, Origen says, Celsus, he has a suspicion that the great works performed by Jesus, of which we have named out a few, a great number, will be brought forward to view. And he affects to grant those that the statements may be true. What's he saying? Celsus, when he's arguing with this guy, he knows that I'm going to bring up the miracles of Jesus, and he knows they probably happened. So this is what Celsus does. Celsus immediately compares them to the tricks of jugglers, who profess to do more wonderful things, and to the feats performed by those who've been taught by the Egyptians. Celsus asks, since then these persons can perform such feats, shall we of necessity conclude that they are sons of God? Or must we admit that they are the proceedings of wicked men under the influence of an evil spirit? Okay, I know Jesus did miraculous things, but that doesn't make him a son of God. He just practiced witchcraft. That's what Celsus argued. But for me, in the 21st century, brothers and sisters, that means Jesus did something. Even his opponents knew Jesus did something. This morning, you may never have had an encounter with the miraculous. By definition, miracles are rare. That's why they're called miraculous. And we have a problem with believing in miracles, but that was not the problem of the ancient world. Not even Jesus' opponents had a problem with this. Jesus did something. The only question that remained was how. Who is this guy who opens blind eyes? How did he do it, and where did he come from?